Fluent English without memorizing a single phrase. Imagine this. You walk into a cafe in London, and instead of freezing, translating in your head, or digging into your memory for a rehearsed sentence, the words just come out. Natural, confident, and real. Not perfect, but fluent. This isn't a fantasy. It's not about talent. And it has absolutely nothing to do with memorizing phrases like a robot. This is about fluency, not repetition. About real connection, not copying. About finally understanding what nobody ever told you. That English fluency doesn't come from what you remember. It comes from what you feel, what you hear, and what you experience, over and over again, in real time. The biggest lie in language learning is that memorization leads to fluency. That if you repeat, "Can I have a coffee, please?" 100 times, you'll magically be able to order with confidence anywhere in the world. But how many of us have done exactly that, only to freeze when someone replies with something unexpected? The truth is, real conversations don't follow scripts. And native speakers? They never memorize fixed expressions. They live in the rhythm of the language. They feel it. They respond to it. They adapt, flow, improvise. And that's what makes them sound natural. Now let's flip the script. What if instead of memorizing phrases, you could absorb English the way you absorbed your first language? Think about it. When you were a baby, you didn't start speaking by memorizing pre-made dialogues. You listened. You observed. You made mistakes. You repeated sounds, not because someone told you to, but because they made sense. You were immersed, fully, and slowly, without a textbook, you started to own the language. That's exactly what this video is about. Not hacks, not shortcuts, but the deep shift in mindset you need to truly speak English fluently, without memorizing a single phrase. We're going to dive into powerful methods you've probably never tried. We're going to rewire the way you think about speaking English. And we're going to build something permanent, real, lasting. You won't need a notebook. You won't need a list of phrases to repeat. What you will need is focus, attention, and a willingness to finally let go of the old method that never worked. You'll discover how rhythm, listening, speaking aloud, and realistic interaction are far more powerful than anything you've ever written down. By the end, you'll feel the difference. Not just understand it intellectually, but experience it physically, in your voice, in your confidence, in the way you react naturally to spoken English. Because fluency isn't something you study, it's something you train. And you're about to begin. Let's begin with what may be the most powerful concept in speaking fluent English. Input creates output. If your goal is to speak naturally, clearly, and with confidence, you first need to train your brain to recognize and absorb real English in action. That means shifting your focus from memorizing static lines to experiencing the language in context, rhythm, and emotion. Think about music. You don't memorize entire songs word by word to sing along. You hear the rhythm. You feel the emotion. Your body reacts. Over time, the melody becomes part of you. The lyrics start to flow, even if you never studied them. That's how real speaking fluency works. The rhythm, the melody, the intonation of English. These are the invisible structures that unlock your ability to speak without thinking. The traditional method of learning English has convinced millions of learners to build sentences by memorizing phrases. But that's like trying to dance by only learning poses. Speaking is not a static process. It's fluid, alive, reactive. If you rely on memorized phrases, you freeze the moment something changes. Someone asks you a question in a way you didn't expect. You're stuck. They use a different word order. You panic. The conversation moves faster than your memory. You shut down. That's because memorization is a crutch, not a strategy. But when you shift your focus to input, meaningful, real-world English heard consistently, you start building a powerful inner database. Your ears pick up common chunks of speech. Your brain starts to connect patterns. You begin to feel how sentences are formed without needing to consciously translate. You start responding, not reciting. That's the turning point. You go from student to speaker. This is why the most fluent speakers are not the ones who study the most, but the ones who surround themselves with English. They listen while walking, cooking, driving. They speak to themselves, out loud, even if it feels silly. They narrate their lives, imitate native speakers, repeat phrases they hear naturally in shows or podcasts. Not because they memorized them, but because they lived them. You don't need more grammar rules. You don't need longer vocabulary lists. You need more real English entering your brain every single day in a way that's engaging, repetitive, and immersive. That's how your output starts to change. That's how speaking becomes effortless. Imagine training your ears every day for 15 minutes with real English. Not textbook recordings, but fast, emotional, imperfect conversations. Then you spend another 10 minutes speaking aloud, imitating the tone, the pauses, the rise and fall. Finally, 5 minutes narrating your own thoughts, as if you're explaining your day to a friend in English. In just 30 minutes, you've done more for your speaking than most learners do in a week of phrase memorization. This approach works because it's neurologically aligned with how we naturally learn languages. Your brain loves patterns. It loves repetition, but not through rote memorization, through exposure, engagement, and use. The more you hear and speak in real rhythm, the more confident you become. You don't have to build sentences anymore. They build themselves, automatically, inside your head. So stop asking, "What's the best phrase for this situation?" and start asking, "What does this sound like when real people say it?" That mindset shift will change everything. Fluency is not about remembering. It's about reacting. And that starts with input. Because input creates output. The next key to speaking fluent English without memorizing phrases is understanding the rhythm of real conversation. Not the mechanical rhythm of textbook dialogues, but the messy, unpredictable, emotional rhythm of actual human speech. If you want to speak naturally, you have to first listen differently. Most English learners focus too much on individual words. They slow down audio to catch every syllable. They repeat robotic lines from language apps that don't sound like anything a real person would ever say. But native speakers don't talk word by word. They speak in thought groups, stress patterns, and intonation flows. That's the rhythm you need to feel. That's the rhythm you need to copy. Think about how music works. The beat isn't in the individual notes, it's in the spaces between them. The same is true in English. You don't need to understand every single word to understand the message. You need to hear the flow, where the voice goes up, where it falls, where the pauses happen. That's what makes speech sound alive. And that's what makes you sound fluent. Let's take an example. A textbook might teach you, "What do you want to eat?" But in real speech, that becomes, "What do you want to eat?" It flows. It contracts. It breathes. If you've only memorized the perfect version, you'll miss it completely. But if you've trained your ear to hear rhythm and flow, you'll recognize it instantly. And eventually, you'll say it that way too, without thinking. Here's the secret. Rhythm leads to memory. Not the memory of a rigid phrase, but the muscle memory of speech. Your mouth, your tongue, your breath. They all start to sync with the natural music of the language. You're not just remembering words. You're playing a new instrument. And fluency comes from practice, not perfection. This is why shadowing is such a powerful tool. You take a native audio clip, a real one, not a scripted recording, and you speak along with it. Not after, with. You imitate the speaker's tone, their stress, their emotion. You don't worry about translating. You don't stop when you don't understand. You just follow the rhythm. Over time, your mouth learns to dance with the language. And that's what fluency really is. A dance, not a test. And here's what nobody tells you. Rhythm helps you think faster in English. When you feel the flow, you stop translating. You stop hesitating. You start responding in rhythm. Even when your grammar isn't perfect, the rhythm gives you confidence. You sound more natural. People understand you better, and you enjoy speaking more. Try this. Choose a short scene from a movie or series you like. Under a minute. Watch it once with subtitles. Then turn them off. Listen again and again. Then shadow it. Copy everything: speed, tone, attitude. Do it every day for a week. Don't memorize the words. Memorize the feel. That's how you internalize real English, not as a list of phrases, but as a living rhythm. This chapter is about freeing you from the trap of textbook speech. It's about helping you hear what's actually there, not what you expect. It's about trusting your ears, not your memory. Because when you start to hear English as music, speaking it becomes easier, faster, and more natural than ever before. Rhythm isn't a bonus. It's the bridge between listening and speaking. It's what transforms silent learners into confident communicators. And once you hear it, you'll never go back to memorizing lifeless sentences again. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood ideas in language learning: thinking in English. Everyone says it. Few actually explain how to do it, and even fewer talk about the one thing that blocks it: the obsession with memorizing perfect phrases. When you memorize a phrase, your brain stores it like a file. It's there, but it's passive. It doesn't grow. It doesn't adapt. It doesn't connect with the rest of your knowledge. So when it's time to use it, your brain starts a search. It looks for the exact match. If it finds it, you might speak. If it doesn't, you freeze. This is not fluency. This is file retrieval. It's slow. It's stressful. And it breaks down the moment the conversation changes. Thinking in English isn't about translating faster. It's about not needing to translate at all. It's about experiencing English directly, as your first response, not as a second step. And to do that, you need something deeper than memorized chunks. You need real connection with the language: emotional, visual, instinctive. You need to train your brain to see the world through English. Here's how it starts. You take small, simple moments in your day and describe them in English, silently or out loud. You open the fridge and say to yourself, "Nothing to eat today." You walk outside and think, "It's too hot for this jacket." You drop your keys and mutter, "Where did I leave them?" These are not perfect sentences. They're not memorized. They're real. And that's the key. You're not studying English. You're living it. The more often you do this, the more automatic it becomes. Your brain starts choosing English first, not because it's been trained with rules, but because it's been trained with use. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, every movement is conscious, but over time it becomes unconscious, fluid. You don't think about balance, you just ride. Thinking in English works the same way, but only if you stop trying to control the process with memorized material. There's also a second layer: reactive thinking. This is when you watch a show or listen to someone speak, and you mentally react in English. You hear a line like, "I forgot my passport," and in your mind you respond, "That's the worst feeling." You hear, "She didn't come back," and you think, "I knew it." This inner dialogue is pure gold. It's where fluency grows. You're not rehearsing. You're not translating. You're living inside the language. And here's the surprising part. You don't need advanced vocabulary to think in English. In fact, it's better to start with simple, emotional daily language. You want your thoughts to match real communication, not academic writing. You want to express confusion, excitement, sarcasm, surprise, just like you would in your native language. That emotional connection builds speed, flexibility, and natural response. It's not about speaking more words. It's about speaking more you in English. Thinking in English isn't a goal. It's a habit. And like any habit, it needs repetition, not perfection. You'll make mistakes. You'll forget words. You'll pause. That's okay. Fluency doesn't come from getting it right. It comes from doing it anyway, again and again, until the voice in your head starts speaking the language you've always wanted to master. So stop waiting for the perfect phrase to appear. Start reacting, observing, commenting, describing, all in English. Not because someone told you to, but because it feels real, feels useful, feels alive. That's how you break free from memorization. That's how you start thinking in English. Now it's time to address one of the most dangerous myths that holds learners back: the belief that you must speak perfectly to speak at all. This mindset is the silent killer of fluency. It's what keeps you quiet in conversations. It's what makes you overthink every word. It's what traps you in endless hesitation. And it comes directly from a system based on memorizing correct phrases. Let's be honest, real conversations are not perfect. Native speakers interrupt each other, change subjects, use filler words, and even invent expressions on the spot. Nobody speaks with a script. And yet, learners are taught that unless they say things exactly right, they shouldn't speak at all. That pressure kills confidence. It turns language into a test, and it makes speaking feel like walking through a minefield. One wrong step, and boom, embarrassment. But here's the truth. Fluency is not about being perfect. It's about staying in the flow. It's about keeping the conversation alive, even when you don't know the exact word or grammar rule. It's about responding like a human, not like a robot. And the only way to train that is to let go of control. Think of children learning to talk. They don't wait until they have a complete sentence in their head. They try, they guess, they use body language, expressions, sounds, whatever helps them be understood. They're not afraid to mess up because they're focused on connection, not correctness. And guess what? That's why they improve so fast. They learn by using the language, not by memorizing it. You can do the same. You can stop trying to remember and start trying to respond. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, even if your accent shows, even if you forget a word and have to describe it another way, that's not failure. That's fluency in action. Now here's a powerful mindset shift. Speaking is a skill, not a performance. When you speak, you're not delivering a final product. You're building a bridge in real time. Every word is a step forward, not a test of what you've learned. The more steps you take, the stronger your confidence. And with each mistake, yes, each mistake, you gain data, experience, muscle memory. To reinforce this, start practicing improvised speaking daily. Pick a topic, anything, your favorite meal, what you did yesterday, a place you want to visit. Set a timer for 1 minute. Speak non-stop. No stopping to fix yourself. No looking up words. Just speak. If you get stuck, describe what you mean in another way. If you forget a word, use your hands or make a sound. Keep the energy moving. The goal is flow, not perfection. You'll be shocked at how quickly your confidence grows. Not because you're making fewer mistakes, but because you're learning to live through them. You'll feel lighter, faster, more real. You'll stop apologizing. You'll stop hesitating. You'll stop judging yourself every time you open your mouth. And that's the breakthrough. When you stop chasing perfect sentences, you start building real fluency. When you speak, even when it's messy, you train your brain to function under pressure. You unlock your ability to improvise, the skill that every fluent speaker uses every day. So forget about sounding like a native. Focus on sounding like you, fully present, expressive, and in motion. The best speakers aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who don't let mistakes stop them. Fluency begins where perfection ends. Now let's talk about the role of your environment. Not your country or your school, but your language environment. The world you mentally live in every day. Because even if you don't live in an English-speaking country, you can still live in English. Fluency is not location, it's immersion. And immersion today doesn't mean packing a suitcase. It means curating the input your brain receives every hour. Because what you hear, see, and think becomes what you speak. And if your environment is still in your native language 95% of the time, your fluency will always feel like something separate, something far away. But if you flip that, if you deliberately create a world filled with English, everything changes. You don't need to memorize phrases, you'll absorb them. You don't need to remember grammar rules, you'll feel them. Language becomes part of the background noise of your life, and from there, it becomes part of your instinct. Start with your phone. Change the language. Every tap, every notification, every app, all in English. Then your music, your shows, your YouTube feed, your Instagram captions, your podcasts. Flood your brain with real, emotional, natural English. The kind that people actually use. Not the edited, neutral, boring kind from textbooks. But don't stop at passive input. Your environment also needs output. Safe spaces to use the language without fear. That could be a language exchange. It could be leaving comments in English, recording voice notes to yourself, or speaking to the mirror. What matters isn't how impressive your English sounds. What matters is how present it becomes in your life. And here's something no one tells you. The brain is incredibly adaptable. It responds to repetition, emotion, and urgency. If you expose it to English often, in ways that feel real, it wants to understand. It wants to respond. It starts to build connections, speed, shortcuts, all without memorizing anything. That's how you create an English reflex. A spontaneous, instinctive response. Not a translation, not a guess, a reflex. Let's imagine two learners. One studies phrases for 30 minutes a day. The other surrounds themselves with English all day. Music, videos, notes, thoughts. Who will speak more fluently in 6 months? The second one, every time. Because they're not just learning, they're becoming. And that's the real goal. Not to study English, but to become someone who lives in it. So ask yourself, is English part of your daily environment? Or is it still a foreign subject you visit sometimes? Are you waiting for the perfect opportunity? Or are you creating one with every video you watch, every word you whisper, every choice you make? You don't need a classroom. You don't need a plane ticket. You need exposure, repetition, emotion. You need to turn English into something that touches your real life, your thoughts, your hobbies, your routines. Because fluency doesn't grow in silence. It grows in immersion. Make your environment your teacher. Make your life the classroom. And let English become the language of your everyday experience. Let's now confront one of the deepest fears holding learners back. The fear of sounding wrong, of being judged, of feeling stupid. That fear is the invisible wall between I understand and I speak. And it grows every time someone corrects you too soon. Every time a teacher says, "That's not right." Every time you're told to memorize the right way to say it, or don't say it at all. This fear trains your brain to prioritize safety over expression. It teaches you to stay quiet instead of speak with risk. But here's the truth that changes everything. Fluency is not the absence of fear. It's your ability to move through it. When a child is learning to speak, we don't interrupt them every 5 seconds to correct grammar. We cheer them on. We celebrate their effort. We listen for meaning, not accuracy. And as a result, they keep trying. They keep experimenting. They keep building fluency, not by avoiding mistakes, but by surviving them. You need that same environment. One that doesn't punish errors, but embraces them as part of growth. What would happen if you let go of perfection for just one conversation? If you said the sentence, even if it was messy? If you focused on connecting instead of impressing? The world wouldn't end. In fact, that might be the first time you actually felt fluent. Because you weren't filtering, hesitating, calculating. You were just being in the language. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They're evidence that you're working at the edge of your ability. And that's exactly where learning happens. You didn't learn to walk without falling. You didn't learn to write without misspelling. Why would speaking be any different? When you memorize phrases, you're trying to avoid that discomfort. You're building a wall of pre-approved words to protect yourself. But real conversations don't follow scripts. They shift. They surprise you. They force you to adapt. And memorized phrases fall apart the moment things get unpredictable. So what's the solution? It's not to memorize better. It's to become more resilient. To build the habit of trying anyway. To say the word even if your accent isn't perfect. To ask a question even if the grammar is off. To respond with your best version, not your perfect version. You don't need approval to speak. You need practice. You need repetition. You need experiences that prove to your brain, yes, I can do this. I can survive being imperfect. I can still communicate. And that kind of confidence can't be studied. It has to be earned. By doing the uncomfortable thing over and over until it becomes normal. Create moments where you're allowed to speak badly. Talk to yourself in English while washing dishes. Narrate your thoughts while walking down the street. Join a conversation group where mistakes are welcome. These small acts are not academic. They're emotional training, and they build your speaking muscles faster than any phrasebook ever could. Fluency is not found in correctness. It's found in courage, in the willingness to speak up when your heart is racing, when your mind is blank, when your accent is strong. That's where your voice lives. That's where real language begins. So stop asking, is this right? Start asking, does this connect? If the answer is yes, speak. If the answer is maybe, speak anyway. Because silence never made anyone fluent. But boldness does. Let's bring everything together. You've seen that fluency isn't memorized, it's built. Not in silence, not in perfection, but in motion, in messiness, in repetition, and in the real human experience of trying again and again, even when it's not polished. So what now? Now is the moment you stop waiting. Waiting for the perfect word. Waiting until you finish your next lesson. Waiting until you memorize just one more phrase. Waiting until you feel ready. Because fluency doesn't come to the ready. It comes to the willing. And willing means acting now. If you've been stuck, quiet, hesitant, this is your moment to shift. Not by downloading another app, not by repeating textbook dialogues, but by stepping into the language with your full self, with your curiosity, your emotion, your memories, your voice. Imperfect as it is, beautiful as it is. Forget about how others speak. Forget about accent standards. Forget about flawless grammar. Native speakers break rules every minute, and no one corrects them. Why? Because the purpose of language is not correctness, it's connection. When you embrace that, your English becomes yours. Not borrowed, not copied, not memorized. Yours. You have more than enough inside you to start speaking now. You have thoughts, stories, questions, ideas. You have the power to connect across cultures, to share who you are, to open doors you didn't think you could open. That doesn't start with memorization. It starts with permission. The permission to try, to stumble, to laugh, to come back stronger, to grow. Language is a living thing. It breathes with you. It grows when you nurture it. It responds when you feed it emotion. And it comes alive when you use it. Not when you rehearse it endlessly, but when you trust yourself enough to show up, even without a script. Every fluent speaker you admire once stood where you are. Nervous, unsure, afraid to sound foolish. But they crossed the line, not because they knew more, but because they let go of the fear of not knowing enough. And now it's your turn. From this point forward, commit to using your English every single day. Not as a chore, but as a tool for life. Speak to yourself. Speak to strangers. Speak to the mirror. Speak in your thoughts. Don't ask for fluency. Build it. Live it. Become it. And when you speak that first unscripted sentence, shaky, messy, real, you'll feel something spark inside. That's not just English. That's your voice free. Now go speak like it belongs to you.